Jeremy Rifkin joins me now. He is the founder and president of the Foundation on Economic Trends. And Mr. Rifkin, you are talking to the forum today about agriculture and the third industrial revolution. You're giving a keynote address. What will be your main message to the forum?
Well, we're engaged in a new economic revolution that's going to increase our prosperity, put businesses back to work, hire a lot of people, and most important, create a more sustainable ecological society. The elephant in the room is climate change. It's in real time now. It's threatening our ability to survive on this planet. And interesting enough, agriculture plays a major role in climate change, which is never, ever talked about. You know, we normally think that industrial activity from our buildings and factories and from our transportation are the major causes. Wake-up call. Our agriculture around the world is responsible for 1/3 of all the global warming gases. No one ever talks about it. It gets a total pass. So I'm going to talk about it here today, how the agricultural industry can become part of a third industrial revolution in a smarter world.
Do you not feel that they are a part of it at all yet?
Well, small parts are. Let me explain what the issue is here. What people don't understand about climate change is it changes the water cycles of the earth. That's why it's so dangerous. Our ecosystems have developed over millions of years based on the water cycles that traverse the earth. For every 1 degree that the temperature goes up because of industrial climate change, the atmosphere is actually sucking up 7% more precipitation from the ground, so we're getting more concentrated precipitation in the atmosphere, more violent water events. More blockbuster winter snows, more spring flooding, more summer droughts, more category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes. It's devastating our agricultural fields all over the world. Our food production is plummeting because of climate change. And what's interesting is it's the agricultural industry that's responsible for a lot of that climate change that's happening. For example, we have been using chemical farming since World War II. We have doused the arable land around the world with chemicals made out of fossil fuels. So when we convert fossil fuels to fertilizers in the factory, it emits CO2. Then when we lay down those chemical fertilizers on the ground, it emits nitrous oxide, which is 290 times more potent than CO2 as a global warming gas. And then to add to the problem, we have transformed much of our agriculture from food grain to feed grain, so that we can have a diet high up on the food chain with beef production and other livestock. There are 1.3 billion cows on the planet. They produce massive amounts of methane, which is much more potent than CO2, and they're responsible for a lot of the global warming. So when we begin to look at agriculture, it is not only inefficient, but the chemical use, the shift into eating high up in the food chain with beef production, causes massive amounts of CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide. Again, it's 1/3 of all the global warming, and no one talks about it. What we need to do is make a shift. We have the science now that can shift us from chemical agriculture to sustainable organic agriculture. There are regions all over Europe where the farmers are doing quite well without the chemicals, producing products that people want to buy in the store that are organic. Secondly, we need to move down the food chain, and that is reduce our diet of beef consumption, which is extremely inefficient in terms of the food chain. It doesn't mean eliminate it, but reduce our beef consumption and get our proteins from our legumes and vegetables. And third, every farm should be self-sufficient on energy, because energy is a big player in your machinery, your production, your processing. We should incentivize through the EU the ability of farmers to place wind turbines on their farms, bioconverters, geothermal heat pumps, solar panels, so they can be off-grid and produce their own energy at near zero marginal cost to make them competitive.
Don't you think you are preaching to the converted a little bit, certainly at a forum like this, where farmers are fully aware that the soil, the way they use it, the land, the air, the water, these things are absolutely essential to producing more and inputting less.
But I'm not speaking to the converted yet. Let me be very, very blunt here. I do think that farmers are increasingly aware that there are problems with the existing agriculture, but a lot of them feel like they are stuck in an old system. We have not anywhere near had a conversation about the elimination of chemical agriculture. And the life science companies are still heavily engaged in producing crops that can be conditioned for chemical spraying of pesticides, etc. But I do believe there's a growing consensus among a lot of farmers in the EU. They'd rather go organic and sustainable, many of them there are, because they get better prices for their products. The problem is, in order to qualify to be an organic farmer, you have to lay your land fallow for up to 7 years to get rid of the chemicals. I think the EU should help subsidize or provide the incentives so farmers can make the transition. I think the life science companies can play a major role here because they have state-of-the-art science with genomics research to help us move into a more ecological agriculture, so we work with the surrounding ecosystem and not against it with chemical penetration. So I also think that the farmers are not being subsidized and incentivized enough to be able to produce their own electricity on the farm so that they can be less dependent on the high price of energy from the grid. So I'm in favor of ways the EU could find a way to take some of this farm subsidy and incentivize a shift to a third industrial revolution sustainable farming practices, which would allow us to mitigate climate change, allow farmers to have a soil base that would be nurtured for future generations, and allow consumers to have the kind of safe, clean, green food products that they want.
Farmers have moved a long way though, surely. Precision farming is there, knowing where to plant at the right time, working with the agrochemical companies to look at the best solutions and not degrade the environment, because we know that we're not going to feed the world in that way, and we know that economically organic is the way to go. Sustainable intensification is something that we have debated at the forum before. So, that sense is there. The policy framework, though, is something that you've touched on, and you'll have a message to the policymakers as well.
We have the long-term journey here now is what we call Digital Europe. It's the new plan for the new European Commission, and the Digital Europe is going to allow the farmers and food processors and retailers to dramatically increase their efficiencies and reduce their ecological footprint. Good business. Let me explain. We're beginning to bring together the three major components of every economic revolution: communication, energy, and new transport. The communication internet that we use today is converging with a digitalized renewable energy internet and a digitalized automated transport and logistics internet to create the kernel for a new platform called the Internet of Things. And this Internet of Things, we're embedding sensors across the value chain that can send data back to these three internets. Look at agriculture. We have sensors now embedded in the agricultural fields that check the soil salinity, the water, the growth of the crops. We have sensors along the whole food chain. So we have sensors that can trace what's happening to the food to the warehouses, sensors in smart roads. We have sensors in the retail stores looking at the refrigeration and the energy cost and keeping that food fresh. We have sensors now in smart homes that can help consumers reduce the energy in preparing their foods and recycling them, etc. So what this means is, as this Internet of Things platform comes in and every device can talk to every other device and send data across the value chain, it means any farmer listening to me in the next few years is going to be able, or any food processor or retailer, to cut their swath of the value chain out, and watch the big data going through that food system and use their own analytics, their own algorithms, create their own apps, so that if you're a farmer or a wholesaler retailer, you can dramatically increase your aggregate efficiencies at every step of conversion across your food chain, dramatically increase your productivity and dramatically reduce your marginal cost, so that all across that food system you can be competitive in a global capitalist market and at the same time reduce your ecological footprint. This is what the Internet of Things for a third industrial revolution will provide for farmers and processors and life science industries and consumers. So it's a great leap forward in productivity. It requires a dramatic transformation in how we look at agriculture, and it brings state-of-the-art high tech to the position where every farmer can take advantage of it.
I'm sure
all they need is a laptop or a mobile phone.
The forum will be very interested to hear your views. Jeremy Rifkin, thank you very much, and enjoy the forum today.